If you just go and run some campaigns and you don't have mechanisms in the back end to say, okay, here's how many leads we're receiving from the campaigns. Here are the keywords that are driving leads, not driving leads, etc. Then you don't know whether or not it actually worked, and you don't know how to make it better.
Welcome to the Mastering E-commerce Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Eitan Koter, co-CEO of Vimy. In an era of rising acquisition costs and increased competition, this podcast is dedicated to helping you drive sales, engage customers, and build meaningful communities so you can turn passive visitors into active buyers. Now let's get started with the episode. Welcome to another episode of Mastering E-commerce Marketing. Today's guest is John Horn, CEO of StubGroup, a top 1% premier Google partner agency specializing in high-performance PPC campaigns. John and his team help business owners and marketing teams turn struggling ad accounts into ROI-generating machines. With a boutique, hands-on approach, StubGroup is known for combining expert ad management with deep platform compliance knowledge, helping clients avoid costly disapprovals and account suspensions. John has taught digital advertising to over 100,000 students, written top marketing publications, and lives and breathes PPC strategy. Get ready for a masterclass on what actually works in digital advertising today. Hey, John, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on.
Great, it's a pleasure to have you here, John. And before we get started, if you had to pick 3 words that matter most to you, personally or professionally, what would they be?
We'll go with integrity, care, and productivity.
Wow, nice. I need more information. I need more details why you chose these words.
Again, so integrity, super important to me. We live in, specifically live in an agency world where there are a lot of lack of integrity. There's always kind of this sometimes hostile relationship almost between the agency and the client, where you're trying to kind of hide what's going on and not be transparent. And it's very important to me that we are transparent with our clients, with our team members individually. If we make a mistake, we own it, we stand up to it. If a client is, customer's not always right either, so sometimes you've got to apply that to them. So integrity is super important. And very much segues into care as well. So I care about the quality of the work we perform, the performance we drive for our clients, how I treat the team members I'm working with, etc. And that's very, very important to me. And then, productivity. You got to get stuff done. Yeah, a lot of work out there, and always got to be making sure things happen and things happen efficiently. So those words come to mind.
I mean, it's just building this integrity. It's not easy with customers. Just, becoming kind of an extension of their team, right? Building such a relationship that they feel you are an internal member and there is a real value sharing and real knowledge sharing just to make this more efficient. I think this is the best place, to start any type of business. So really love that example. So John, what are the most common mistakes, businesses make with their PPC campaigns? How can they avoid them?
So there are lots of mistakes we could go into. Let me pick just a couple for the sake of time here. I think one I talk about often, because it's one of the most common that I see, is businesses going into PPC, whether it be Google Ads or another platform, with unrealistic expectations and with a lack of understanding of how they're going to define success and measure success. So a lot of businesses, they'll take this approach of, hey, let's throw things at the wall, see what sticks. And, to a certain extent, there is some of that certainly in testing new campaigns. You don't know how they're going to perform until you run them. But you have to understand, what is I'm trying to accomplish with these campaigns? And very specifically, am I looking for leads through my website? Great. Is that form fills? Is that phone calls? Is that people showing up physically? Okay, great. What, realistically could I pay? What's a good cost per lead or a bad cost per lead in terms of assessing the performance of my campaign? And how am I going to measure that? With the measurement being super important, because if you just go and run some campaigns and you don't have mechanisms in the back end to say, okay, here's how many leads we're receiving from the campaigns. Here are the keywords that are driving leads. Here are the keywords that are not driving leads, etc. Then you don't know whether or not it actually worked. And you don't know how to make it better. You don't know which parts are not working. You can cut wasted ad spend, which parts you can double down on. And so that's something that I just see a lot of businesses not think through properly when they first get into a platform.
Yeah. So we assume those businesses already achieve product market fit. Obviously, they are not just throwing out dollars out there before product market fit. So on that stage, as you mentioned, there are various stages. Like companies are looking for, lead generation. Companies are looking for conversion, are looking for awareness. So how do you tailor your PPC, campaigns strategically to those different stages of the marketing funnel?
Yes, we work with people really in all of those stages, and as you're mentioning here, it is a very different tailored strategy. So, for example, we'll have some businesses, let's say startups, who don't yet have product market fit, and they want to use PPC as a way to see if they have product market fit, because it's a much faster feedback loop than, for example, trying to invest into SEO, and it might be 6, 12 months, you might never get there. Whereas with PPC, obviously it costs money, so it's not cheap, but you can very quickly see, are people searching for what I think they're searching for? If so, they're getting to our website, are they converting or not, and so forth. So with that type of stage, it's all about testing and iteration of, are we getting traffic? Is it the right traffic? How are they responding to different, messaging, different offers on our website and so forth. And it's really about it's not as much about efficiency at that stage. It's about, again, do we have a product that people actually care about?
Mhm.
Then kind of moving on from that stage, you have businesses like you mentioned that do have product market fit. Hopefully they're already seeing good results from other marketing, other traffic sources they have, and they're looking to get more, put fuel in the fire, which is what advertising is great at, is, getting you more of what's already working. And so there, generally speaking, efficiency is very much in mind for those clients. They have a sense for what it's worth to acquire a new customer, hopefully have an idea of lifetime value, things like that. And so the question is, all right, how can we drive you new incremental business in a profitable way? And usually we kind of think of it as a funnel. We'll start with the lowest hanging fruit. So often the lowest hanging fruit might be people who are Googling for exactly the type of service that you provide. Let's say you're an email marketing company. Okay, great. Well, people who are looking for email marketing software are telling us they're looking for what you do. So we might go after, traffic like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of tap out each step of the funnel. Okay, get as much of the profitable, traffic from people looking for email marketing software as possible. Now let's think through another way people might search for that. Maybe they're not searching for email marketing software, but they're searching about problems they're experiencing in your competitor's email marketing software. And you can search those problems people are trying to solve as keywords, and you can say, hey, we got the solution. And, take people to tailored pages on your website about the solution. And then kind of goes up from there. So you have search, but then you also have other platforms like YouTube, for example, which can be very, very powerful at a little bit higher funnel, but at getting still in front of relevant people, making them aware of your product, your service, your brand, and getting them into your funnel, and then working them down towards lead capture.
Yeah. So you mentioned variety of scenarios and probably use cases. What are some of the interesting KPIs that are important to you, while launching these campaigns?
Some of the most important KPIs are going to be first of all, conversion rate, number of people who click your ad, reach your landing page, and then turn it into the action you want them to take, whether that be, scheduling a demo, placing a phone call, whatever. So conversion rate is incredibly important. And that's a rate a lot of people don't think about because they're really focused. A lot of people will really focus on the ad side of things. Like, hey, what's our click-through rate? What's our cost per click? Which are important metrics we'll talk about in a second as well. But if you are sending people to a suboptimal experience on your website and you're losing people just because you're not giving them a compelling offer, you're not answering their questions, whatever the case may be, then those first metrics don't really matter because you're just wasting so much money that you could be capturing by increasing your conversion rate. So
Yeah.
conversion rate, super, super important. Cost per click, also very important because really it's your cost per click and your conversion rate combined that are going to be your cost per lead. Or your return on ad spend if you're in the e-commerce space. So it's how much are you spending to acquire traffic on average, how much of that traffic is converting into orders. So those would be the very two, I would say, most primary metrics that we look at. And then kind of all the other metrics, and there are many of them, they all kind of build into or have an impact on those two primary metrics.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. And I mean, when you look at an existing campaign, let's say a new customer, you're onboarding a new customer, is already working with other agency or is trying to do it by himself. What are usually the process? I mean, how do you identify, the missing, points or some of the problematic issues in these campaigns? How do you analyze, and what's your process?
Yeah, so we start with a very detailed audit. And there's a lot of things that we look at, but I'd say some of the core things, first of all, is going to be that conversion tracking so that we understand what are they tracking currently and what aren't they tracking currently. And most of the time, we'll find a lot of issues here. We might find, hey, you've got big gaps in your tracking. We don't know what's happening. Sometimes we'll find, double tracking where it's like, hey, you think your cost per lead is, 200, it's actually 400 because you're counting leads twice, things like that. And that's really important to figure out as a baseline, because then all the rest of the analysis we do of the account and how it's performing needs to be based upon those metrics. And so then we look at things like the search terms report. Very often we'll see that the traffic that people are acquiring, so the specific searches their ads are showing up for, maybe aren't quite as relevant as they think. Because the way that Google works is you give Google a bunch of keywords where you're saying, hey, if someone searches for this, I want my ad to appear. But Google has a lot of flexibility with many different permutations and synonyms and intent and whatnot of the actual search terms they match to those keywords. And if you're not very closely monitoring that, you'll find yourself, an example I like to give is we did an audit for a client. They're a local tree service. They come out, trim trees, things like that. And we looked at their search terms report, and Google's giving them a bunch of traffic from people looking for Dollar Tree, which is a dollar store chain here in the US, which obviously completely irrelevant from a relevance perspective. But Google's like, oh, tree, that's relevant. So, looking for things like that is super important. And then I would say the last thing probably I'll point out as a key thing we look at is the mixture of different types of campaigns that a client is running, because there are lots of different types of campaigns you can run in Google. Some are generally going to be more effective than others. And so, for example, you've got like search campaigns that are really low funnel. You've got performance max campaigns, which Google really pushes. You've got demand gen, you've got YouTube, etc. And so it's looking at that mix and seeing, does it make sense? Are we spending, really capping out our opportunity at the bottom of the funnel where we can get the most profitable orders or leads or whatever? And then how much are we allocating to testing higher in the funnel, things like that, and making sure it's got the right balance?
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned previously about using PPC for market research, for like pre-product market fit, or even after just figure out things. It's not something that common, right? Usually you go for a market research or for some kind of an SEO. Can you share more details about how you exactly do that?
Yeah, it's one of these things. It's definitely not cheap because traffic is not cheap on Google. So it's not the type of thing that, every company is going to do to test market fit. But if you have some resources and you want to quickly, figure out things, Google Ads can be great for that, because first of all, it will tell you, are people actually searching for what you think they're searching? Do they have the need you think they have? Because if people aren't searching, you're just not going to get clicks on your ads. Your ads aren't going to show up. So you can very, very quickly see, is there a market for the types of searches I think there is? Then you can see, is the offer that I am communicating in my ads, is that interesting to people? And you can look at things like click-through rate to see what percentage of people who are seeing my ads are then engaging with my ads.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also start to see who are your top competitors in the paid space. So you can see, okay, this company over here is kind of, the leader right now. Okay, this company over here, our ads are overlapping with them significantly. And so you can start to get a sense of who's really investing from your competitor set into advertising, which also probably means they're investing into other marketing channels as well. And then again, you can also test your actual offer. So you can do all sorts of split testing. You can say, okay, well, what's the difference between offering a free trial for a month versus, a $500 credit off of whatever I'm offering, versus no free trial, versus, what happens if I have my calendar so people can directly schedule a demo with our sales team, versus, hey, let's have them fill out a form and we vet them and reach out to them first. All sorts of things like that you can test through advertising to very quickly have that fast feedback loop and see if people are searching. If they are, how are they interacting with your ads? If they are, how are they interacting with your offer? And then make decisions based upon that.
Yeah, and obviously you come up with some kind of a creative or a messaging, and you launch the campaign. How long do you usually keep it there, analyze it, and when do you start to reiterate it over time?
We really look at it in terms of the amount of data collected, and that is going to be impacted by a couple things. First, it's going to be impacted by your budget and how much and how quickly you're willing to spend money. And then second, of course, it'll be impacted by whether or not people are searching. So if no one's searching for what you're targeting, you're just not going to get traffic, and you'll know very quickly that that no one's interested in that. And so usually we'll look at things in terms of like numbers of clicks. So I like to see ideally a couple of hundred clicks to have a really decent sense for any percentage, any rate that I'm looking at. So for example, conversion rate. I'd like to have a couple hundred clicks to my landing page and then see how many of those clicks turned into people converting on that page, which tells me the conversion rate. And, if it's 1% or 10% or 50% or whatever, that's going to tell me a lot of things. And then I will be able to, once I have those couple hundred clicks, iterate and say, okay, so we had a 1% conversion rate for these first, let's say 200 clicks. Great. Now we're going to try this different offer and we're going to do another, 200 clicks and see what the conversion rate is on that and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
And so from a timing perspective, it could be days, weeks, months. It really depends again on budget and how fast the traffic comes in. And it also depends on your sales cycle. So if you're at a business where, hey, it's a more complicated sell, people are taking time to think through it. Let's say on average, it takes people, 2 weeks to make a decision about reaching out or maybe having first contact or whatever. Well, then obviously I wouldn't want to really change up my offer after 7 days of data because I have no idea yet if people are actually engaging. I need to give it that cycle or maybe 2 cycles to really have a sense for what the numbers are going to shake out to be and then iterate from there.
Yeah, and obviously, I think it's also that number of clicks initially that you're considering as a good, volume to getting some insights is also probably related, whether you're a D2C brand or B2B, right? Like just the volume of that data bucket in terms of a click, I think is very, very relevant. And as you said, you need to keep enough time for the campaign to roll out before we get some intelligence out of it. And you mentioned obviously, conversion rates and CLO. How do you usually guide, clients through this process of optimizing, the landing pages?
We can often provide a lot of value to clients for 2 reasons. First of all, obviously we get a lot of insight into seeing what's working well and what's not, and so we can bring that to bear. But then also we have an outside perspective on their business. So a lot of businesses, they're so caught up in their business and the buzzwords, or not even buzzwords, but the industry terminology that they use, they might refer to something in one way and that makes complete sense. Let's say PPC is a great example. To me, I know PPC means pay per click. It's kind of a name for the category of advertising we work in. But for a lot of just small, medium-sized businesses out there, they have no idea what that means. And so if I have my landing page say, hey, best PPC agency in the world, they might not really understand what that means. Whereas if I say, hey, get the best Google Ads results or get more business using Google Ads.
Great angle, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so we can bring kind of that outside insight into things and say, here's, maybe a better way to phrase it. Here's a way that makes more sense. Here's the actual words people are using when they search for the service. And then of course, help them think through things like, hey, can we create video content that's going to really communicate what you're selling? Can we make sure you've got reviews on your landing page so that you're building credibility? One thing we see often is advertisers might send traffic to their homepage and be like, hey, this is just not a good place to send people because this is not tailored to what they're actually looking for in the service that you're advertising. You need a specific landing page that the headline matches what they're searching for. All the content on here matches. And so instead of them having to click around your website and try and find out what you do, you tell them all in one place and you drive them towards whatever the action you want them to take is with the least number of clicks and therefore the least friction possible.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And John, when, with platforms like Facebook and Google automating a lot of aspects of their campaigns, integrating AI, and that general move to like open targeting, right? How do you see the role of a PPC specialist evolves in the next few years?
Yeah, so it used to be that one of the many things that PPC specialists would do was just tons and tons of button pushing. This is when there was less automation in the marketplace and more of, okay, we'll put this bit adjustment if someone's on their phone versus this bit adjustment if they're on a computer versus this bit adjustment for this zip code, all sorts of things like that. And Google, by and large, has done a great job, and Meta as well, of automating a lot of that and doing it in a way that's much more efficient than humans, simply because Google can look at every single signal that's going to every auction and make an estimate for whether or not they might be likely to convert in a way that humans just cannot do at scale. It's simply impossible. And we don't have access to the millions of signals that Google is using on the back end.
Yeah.
So they can do things like that much, much better than humans can. But what Google can't do is things like making sure the data that's being fed back into Google about what's converting, what's not converting is accurate. Because again, automation, it's good at doing things exponentially. So if you're giving it good, really valid, solid data, it can take that and run with it and get you exponential results. If you're feeding it bad data, double counting conversions, missing conversions, things like that, then it can exponentially waste your money because it's making decisions based upon wrong core data. So, and data breaks all the time. Just because you set things up right doesn't mean that, okay, next week your dev team makes an update to your website and something gets changed and now Google goes crazy, 2 weeks from now because it's got the wrong data. So you've got to constantly be watching and thinking through things like that. And then there's all sorts of strategic decisions as well. Things like, okay, what bidding strategies should we be using? Should we be trying to maximize conversions? Are we going for efficiency, setting a target? Are we just trying to maximize traffic right here? Basically, setting the guardrails for the automation and constantly validating it, checking on it, making sure it's not going on rabbit trails and wasting money is super important. And then the creative aspect as well. Google's trying to do more and more creative actual ad copy, imagery, video itself, but it very often gets it wrong. And you look at like what it wants to run, and you're like, no, I'm going to get in trouble legally. I'm going to get in trouble, all sorts of trouble if I were to run this. Like, it's going to be a big problem. So a lot of creative work also that still goes into campaigns.
Interesting. Yes. Yeah. So, John, tell us about StubGroup, right? Kind of services you provide, and what do you do in the industry?
Yeah, so we are an agency. We've been around for a little over a decade at this point. We spent a lot of time, like we've talked about today, in the PPC world, so Google Ads, Meta Ads, things like that. We also work in some other digital advertising, parts of the ecosystem as well, things like SEO and email marketing and website work. Really trying to just come alongside small, medium-sized businesses and help steward their funds in this digital world and ultimately help them make a lot more money than they are paying out to Google and Meta and everybody else. And get to work with all different types of industries and different sizes of clients.
Amazing. What has changed during this decade?
So much. Definitely, automation, AI is a big thing. It's come leaps and bounds since where it was back in the old days, so to speak. Our ability to have control, especially in the advertising world, has definitely decreased over time. One of the downsides of all of that automation and AI is that the platforms like to become more of a black box and take back control and not tell you exactly what's going on. And so you have to be, really more careful, more strategic these days than even back in the day when you could just see more data, understand more about what was actually going on the back end. And then also, the platforms themselves, they're very mature. They're not cheap because taking Google as an example, everybody knows now that Google is where people go to find solutions, to find products. And so all the advertisers want to be there. And so it's expensive in an auction-based world. And so it's just all the more important to be as sophisticated and efficient with your advertising strategy as possible in order to run profitable campaigns, because it's really easy to just waste money with Google or Meta or whoever and not see the return that you're looking for.
John, you do also many other things, again, in the business, right? You speak, you teach, right? You write. Tell us more about this side of your, I don't know if it's your business or it's things that you're passionate about, or 100,000 students, right? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy communicating. And I enjoy talking about this world because I'm passionate about it and I spend my whole life in it. So I love opportunities. We have a YouTube channel where we put out content. We've done courses online for students to go through. And of course, we have our own team members that get to kind of build into and also learn from as we figure things out. And that's one of the beauties of the world we're in, which is it's constantly changing. So what worked last year doesn't necessarily work this year. And, a course that was accurate 3 years ago isn't necessarily accurate today.
Yeah.
And so it's about constant learning, constant iteration. And then I love the ability to just communicate what we're learning, whether it be on a podcast like this or through our YouTube channel or so forth. And obviously also use it as a way to market our company, because what we often find is when people see that we know what we're talking about, they have a lot of confidence to then work with us and trust us to leverage our skills in their behalf. And so I love spreading the word, hopefully sharing good insights and getting new relationships out of it.
Amazing. And how people can find you and StubGroup?
Yeah, a couple places. So our website, stubgroup.com. And if you add /free to the end of that, we've got some free resources on there that you can download and join our free email list. And then our YouTube channel, search StubGroup on there. We put a lot of free content about Google Ads and just, small business in general.
Amazing. John, anything else you want to add?
No, this has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate you taking the time to have me on.
Yes, thank you for all the knowledge. Wish you all the best. Thank you for listening to the end of this episode. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe so you won't miss any of our future content. Explore Vimy, the video commerce platform that includes live shopping, shoppable video, and social commerce capabilities. Visit Vimy at www.vimy.net. We appreciate your support and look forward for bringing you more valuable insight in our next episode.